Good afternoon, everybody. It is lovely to see you here again in what must be at least the 400th home game session by now. I hope everybody's doing all right. I hope everybody's well and keep safe and all that good kind of stuff. Slightly different home games this week in that we're not going to do the after party. I say different, like 3 weeks ago we didn't do these things, but quite like them. So there's no plans to do that because there's Paraplanners How Wow going on straight after this, and we don't want to nobble any of their audience. So when we're done, we're done. So we'll finish by 1 o'clock and get out of here. My guest, who is on this side of me as I look at my screen, is Alasdair Walker of an IFA firm with a very, very long name. But I'll put that up on the screen in a minute. And we're going to get into chatting away to Alasdair about all kinds of stuff pretty soon. If there are any newbies on this week, there might be 1 or 2 people who have not been on before. The idea of home games is very simple. It's that we talk about things that we might talk about if the current unpleasantness wasn't going on. So we're not particularly interested in coronavirus and all that kind of stuff, though if it comes up, it comes up. But I want to talk about issues and pretend that there's some kind of normality going on as much as we can. T-shirt of the week this week is a very special one, actually, and I'm very excited to bring it to you. It's a bringing together of 2 of Finland's best melodic death metal bands, Insomnium and Omnium Gatherum. Those are kind of funny names. And they went out on tour together, were about to go out on tour together on a tour called, and it had to be Insomnium Gatherum. And then the tour got cancelled. And this might shock you to know, but metal bands such as this don't necessarily make all that much money, and they're both in a fair bit of financial difficulty as a result. So they put the t-shirts out that were going to be sold on tour, and it's got all the dates in the back with cancelled across it, but I won't turn around. And they're kind of selling those. So I don't know if just how into the Helsinki melodic death metal scene you all are, probably pretty into it, I would have thought. But I tell you what, if there are bands you like, or artists that you like, there's an awful lot of them are doing stuff like this at the moment, and it's not a bad time actually to go and see what's going on with them and see if you can support them, buy a record, buy a t-shirt, do whatever it may be. So listen, I'm going to do the time-honored stuff, and we'll let's focus in on this. So Alasdair and me will get very, very small, and let's have a look at what we are going to cover today. So as you know, we've started on household cleaning products. That's the level that we've kind of got to, and actually, you know, Donald Trump is just miles behind the times, because we've been mainlining bleach for a long time in Leith, and it's a decent high. I mean, it's all right. It doesn't last very long, and the come down is something terrible. But interestingly, there is no advantage in going for brand names. The Lidl stuff is just as good. That's obviously, don't do that. So then I'm going to talk a little bit now, less of the research stuff than in previous weeks, because I want to spend a bit more time with Alasdair than we normally would. So I'll do a little bit on that in a second. And then we've got quite a lot to talk about with Alasdair, and he was telling me there's some news coming out today, which is pretty important, particularly in the areas of digital security and that kind of stuff. So I want to talk about that. And then I'm particularly happy with the joke this week. I've got a reserve joke as well, which Chris from Maltrees gave me after last week, and I'm thinking about making it a condition that guests have to give us a joke for the following week, but I'm not actually going to tell the one Chris gave us, so we might start storing them up a bit, and then it's the Paraplanners, as we said. So let's look at as always, I forget, this is the last week I'm going to share this, right? We're doing the thing where we try to get advice professionals, which is paraplanners and advisors and administrators in advisory firms, to rate the platforms that you use. We do it once a quarter, and we have kind of 2 or 3 week window where we whine like little kids about, would you please go and fill out our survey? It doesn't take very long. So this is me whining, and if you haven't done it already, we'd really appreciate it. And this is a link that you can do it on, or you can hit the little green button that's just down at the bottom there, and that'll take you straight to the survey. Thank you very much. The Helsinki Melodicore, that's a new kind of name for it, Alasdair, which is bang on. Okie dokie, right. So let's look at our little bit of research for this week. And this is, again, as we've done most weeks, though not last week, from the big State of the Nation survey that we do once a year. So this is about 400 odd firms, a bit more than that. Responding, and what we asked them to do here is to talk about platforms and to tell us which platforms they felt they were familiar with and how they felt about them. So on the x-axis along the bottom is ascending familiarity. The numbers don't really mean anything very much. It's more familiar on the right hand side, and on the y-axis is favourability, so how favourably people view the platforms that they feel they're familiar with. And we see some, I think we see some quite interesting things here. The first thing that I kind of notice is, unsurprisingly, right, it's the biggest ones that people are most familiar with. That's not a surprise at all. Transact, AJ Bell Standards, OM, Funds Network, and Linda correctly says, my eye was drawn to a magic number that just appeared, which is 400 down in the bottom there, which is amazing. So that's pretty awesome. Anyway, back to the subject, right? Old Mutual, Funds Network, obviously huge. Aviva Massive, and Co-Funds now Aegon platform, absolutely huge as well. So no surprise that everybody knows those platforms or feels familiar with them. But what I think is really interesting is just how positively people view those large firms. And I think we get, there's an outlier there with Transact, right, which is just wins it just wins it every time, and that's interesting. I'll come back to it in a wee sec. But Bell, Standard, Funds Network, OM, all doing really, really well. Aviva's come up quite a lot from where it used to be. We ran this a year ago, and Aviva didn't do so well. It was in the middle of its replatforming woes at that time, but it's really improved its position since then. Co-Fund's still going through some of those problems, so playing a little bit more of a supporting role on those further right-hand platforms. But I kind of expect that when it's the really, really big kind of industry incumbents, that it's going to be that you sort of, it's the one you love to hate, right? That you're not that favourable for the really, really big, particularly kind of Lifeco heritage incumbents, that they would actually be pretty low down on the favourability axis, but it's not the case. And it's kind of interesting. So it makes me wonder about things like status quo bias. It makes me wonder about, are we just loving the one we're with? How much are we looking around at all the various things that are out there? Or it may be that genuinely all those big providers there are doing a really cracking job, and that might well be the case. But it's kind of interesting. And what I like about digging into anonymous kind of research work like this is that we hear a lot from the kind of, in the nicest possible way, the sort of noisy few through social media and in the usual guys that are active in the trade media and all that kind of stuff. And that's one particular view of the world. But when you get lots of firms to contribute to something and you get these kind of silent people that don't normally pipe up on the Twitter or in the money marketing or whatever, you get different results. So what else can we see inside here? Well, look, we've got really good favourability scores, though not that familiar to many firms, from 7IM, Parmenion as well, and we did a little bit on our advisor ratings in one of the earlier home games, and Parmenion did incredibly well there. Nucleus scoring very highly. Nucleus does tend to score quite highly with its users, which isn't to say that it's immune from criticism. Elevate doing really well, which is kind of interesting, though not as well as Standard. Now, I've seen things in the past where Elevate's done better than Standard, so I wonder what's happening there. Alistair says 7IM, Parmenion, Nucleus's marketing departments all rubbing their hands in glee. And I think there is something to do with that, by the way. I think it is the case that familiarity keys to favourability. And the more that platforms kind of work at getting firms to know not just who we are and that we're kind to kittens and puppies and all that kind of stuff, but that we are that this is how we work, letting you see the detail inside it. I think things happen around that time. Down in the bottom there, we've got a big gaggle of people that most firms don't know. And there's probably not a lot to glean from the favourability in there, but the challenge for these guys, whether it's Hubwise, P1, Credo, WealthTime, Fusion, all Premium, all these kind of guys, is to get the kind of familiarity out there. And then we've got another gaggle kind of in the middle there, Zurich, which is going to be rebranded pretty soon, and Embark, James Hay, Novia, and I guess you might include RJ and Seven Almost in those kind of bits as well, are kind of playing a sort of mid-table bit. But it's really interesting. Size, keys to familiarity, keys to favourability. And that's an interesting little stat finding, I think. So there you are. If you do work for a platform marketing department and you're watching this, you probably kind of crack on and do a bit more. The news is extremely good if you work for Transact. Although I do wonder, because there's been some kind of criticism of Transact as we've gone through the last little while about paper processes and that kind of stuff. And there we go. How many firms are in the survey, Mark? Asks Paul. About 400, Paul, just over 400. Ben asked, do you expect Maltese to be on this map when you run it next year? I think so. If they have a statistically significant number of advisor users. Chris was on last week, and I think he's in the audience today as well. Their kind of retail presence is increasing, but remember they're coming from that different background with multifamily office and private banks and stuff. So if they've got if enough advisors have selected them and started using them, then yes, I think they will start popping up here. Can we do a session on what's coming in the platform world? I saw your tweet about Adalpha. Absolutely. We had a really good session from Adalpha yesterday. And I think there's interesting things in there from not just things that are launching, but kind of smaller, earlier stage providers, or those who've been very specialist. And you saw a bit from Maltese last week. I think Premium are in that space as well. Fundment, we're on giving the guys a demo this morning. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing that, and Adalpha too. So drop me a note, let me know who you are looking to get there. Do we need more platforms, says Gary? Probably not. We've got 24, and that takes us to the consolidation argument that we always have anyway. So there we are, right? I like that. I like that chart. I can spend quite a long time talking about it, but I'm not going to, because much more importantly, we're going to go and speak to Alasdair now. So I'm going to close down the wee slide thingy, and here we are. Oh my God, it's us again. Alasdair, hello.
Hello.
Hello properly, and thank you for coming on. And how's it all treating you? How are you going?
Yeah, pretty good. Been getting out and about. Visiting family and friends. Yeah, just generally, spreading myself around as widely as possible, magnanimously.
You're like a super vector of cheer and goodwill around the place.
East Midlands patient zero, probably at this point.
And you've been really active on talking about doing remote client meetings and all that kind of stuff. I saw you were sharing some stuff a few weeks ago. So has that felt like just business as usual for you?
Oh, I love the phrase business as usual. I've got a swear jar on the desk. If I say business as usual, I've got to put some more money in it.
We had an actual swear jar in the office when we were in an office, and it was too expensive. We had to stop.
Yeah, your retirement planning gets pushed back a year every time.
That's right.
At the end of every week. So what did it feel like? Well, we pivoted pretty quickly to being an office-based business to work from home. We'd already got some groundworks laid. We saw it coming in advance. We thought our client, but we're a retirement financial planning type firm, so we didn't want to be an infection vector for all our client meetings about a month in advance of it being forced on us. So we've done that. Zoom meetings, well, we use Zoom video meetings of whatever flavor, I feel like are about 75% of a face-to-face meeting, which is better than a telephone call by quite a long shot, but still, face-to-face is still best.
Well, that kind of makes sense, and it's kind of interesting perspective. There's quite a lot of people saying they, pretty bullish about it, but that kind of sounds right. There must be something in the whites of the eyes kind of experience, right?
Though, in fact, someone shared. It wasn't research. It looked like research, but it was someone's opinion, really dressed up as research. And it was the outcome was basically we get tired after web meetings, video meetings, and a lot of people would agree with this. And it's because all the usual behavioural cues aren't there in the room.
Yeah.
We still only have a 2D view of the person. Now, give it 5 years, and the VR meetings will solve all of that. But maybe 10 years.
God, it's bad enough we're in these things, not one of those big things over your eyes. I'm not sure I can cope with that. So we got into last week, and actually the week before as well, we were talking about digital ID verification and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that we're thinking about, or I've been thinking about over the last couple of weeks, is it seems to me that the more advisor firms, want things to be completely streamlined, the more they end up assuming of the kind of load, the burden share going on. And that kind of comes into security and ID verification. And I think that's something that you've looked at a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. The challenge that we have as planners is we want all of the client ownership with the minimum amount of assumed risk, right? And I'm sure that platforms, tech and security departments and marketing departments want exactly the same thing. The platform wants to be as present and visible in the client's life as possible, and as do we. And we're actually in conflict there in terms of sort of client ownership. So yeah, I mean, streamlined process, electronic ID, anything that makes business easier is great, and it should be great for us and for the companies that we work with. But the challenge is, if we're doing e-signatures, for example, digital signatures, very topical at the moment. I'm seeing lots of good movement there from providers. When the first one gets challenged in the courts, who defends it? The platform or the advisor? Who knows?
Yeah, and it's in like consulting world you work out a kind of perimeter model, they call it, where it's very clearly you're doing that part, we're doing that part, and if you're outsourcing a BPO kind of deal or something, that's the way you do it. Well, that's one way to do it anyway, so that your lines of responsibility are very clearly delineated. But actually in this world, this kind of retail world, a lot of that's buried on page 58 of T's and C's. I know very, very few people, including advisor firms, actually read that stuff. And if you did, I wonder in some cases if you might have a bit of a rude awakening about where liability lies.
Your eternal soul and firstborn child now belong to platform of choice.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. And for me, that's fine because my soul's a kind of black and shriveled thing anyway, so it's long gone. But others are better, and that might matter a little bit more. And that you were talking. You said something really interesting when we were prepping for this. Well, you said several really interesting things, including a funny story, which I'm going to get you to tell. You can do that first. But you don't share some of the opinions people have about things like secure mail and that kind of stuff. So first of all, tell people why you guys are so good on technology. And then second of all, let's talk about the mail stuff.
Okay, I'm going to get in trouble for this because somebody on the call is going to tell me that I'm wrong here. But I have it on good authority. So the business that I'm managing director of, Hanford, Aikenhead and Walker, has been around in a couple of guises since 1978. And I have it on good authority. We were the first IFA, as was then, in Leicester to own a desktop computer for doing businessy stuff on. So if you want to get in touch and tell me I'm wrong, please do. But I have it on authority. That's okay.
Can anybody, any other Leicestershire IFAs, can they confirm or deny the HA&W was first? That's amazing. Was it a BBC Micro? That's the question. And could you
That's a
play
really,
Elite
no,
on it?
I reckon it was probably a 386. I think we were in that kind of.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
right.
I am really
That's a
showing my
lot.
geek stripes here. So sorry about that. But the tech thing is interesting, and I think it's interesting actually because it has all the same problems that financial services has, but with less of the regulation.
Hmm.
Because in financial services, there's a massive information gap. We are the experts up here, and we're just like smattering a bit of information down on the general population. And when you control all that information and all that knowledge, it's dangerous. There are risks, and that's why that's why we have such strong regulation, arguably as a result of
Mm.
that. With tech, no such regulation. A technology company, technology provider, somebody trying to sell you something can basically tell you whatever they want. And it all sounds really important and really serious because they use words like encryption and TLS and two-factor authentication, which I'll touch on briefly. And people hear this and they go, "Oh my God, this is really important. Quick, where do I sign?" So my bugbear, slight bugbear, is around secure messaging. There's a fear of using email, and that fear permeates throughout throughout the sector. But I know banks that are quite happy sending PDF statements by email, for example, without that fear. Email is considered to be a legally permissible document because it has headers that are readable in clear text that say when it was sent, when it was received, who it was sent by, and so on. So it's permissible in court as evidence, but people are concerned about sending things on it, and I think that concern is based on people with a product to sell. Now, don't get me wrong, some of the messaging services are great. I've trialed a couple of them. They can make things easier, but at their worst, they're another friction point between your client and them getting the information they want. And that's the challenge. They're only as strong as the password the client or you choose to use on them. Often they're from smaller businesses. If your email provider's Google or Microsoft, maybe even Yahoo, but probably not. If you're using Yahoo, please don't. But if it's Google or Microsoft, you've got two of the biggest tech companies in the world responsible for your security. If it's like Bob from down the road in Slough, who's made this bit of software that they want to sell you, then you just don't know what's in there, basically. So
Yeah.
that's my rant over.
So, I've heard people say kind of recently, look, if you send stuff unencrypted through email, it's the equivalent of writing it on a postcard, right? And the postie can pick it up and read it, and you've completely gone to the zoo as far as client security goes and GDPR and all the rest of it. So you reckon that that's not the case?
Well, if somebody wants to intercept an email correspondence between me and you, Mark, please feel free. You'll get some great like guitar chat or whatever,
It's
right?
true.
So feel free. Prove me wrong. But as it stands, no, I and I would be happy to be proven wrong. I think there's a Carl Richards quote that I like and steal, which is, "I'm often wrong, but never in doubt." Right. So,
Excellent.
so I'm really happy to be proven wrong.
I mean, I can see where it comes from, and I don't know enough to know if that's true or not. And one of the people that might we might in future weeks we might hear from the guys at Origo on some of this stuff, and they've got skin in that game, so I'm sure they'll disagree with you. But we'll put some of this to them as well. But the thing that's like incontrovertible is that you can't legislate for stupid, and if your password is password123, then that's not bright. I always think of that. Have you ever seen Trainspotting 2? And
No.
they steal a load of credit cards from a kind of sectarian party, and there's a certain date that everyone has as their PIN number, and they use the cash cards.
I remember a friend when I was a teenager. A friend had 3 little scraps of paper in his wallet that said PIN that all had the wrong number on them. On the basis that if someone stole his wallet, they'd try all 3, and then the card would get eaten. Genius security.
That's pretty smart. It's pretty smart. Although if you had one too many and you're trying to think back, anyway, I guess that could be an issue. But I think the idea of password kind of management. As we use more and more apps, somebody said, as Tom said in the wee thing here, sign up secure messaging, our risk profile, our digital fact find, our portal, all the things that advisors use, and somewhere between 5 and 10 different systems routinely, I think, on a daily basis. So, I mean, you obviously know what you're about. How do you deal with the password side of things?
Yeah, so
and what are your passwords?
well, okay, so password 123, one of my favorite. I'm really
It's
upset that you put that out
excellent.
there. But a couple of things. So first of all, in 2020, please be using a password manager. There are free ones available. There are paid for ones available. There are ones that you can manage your team with. LastPass, 1Password, Dashlane, take your pick. They all do the same thing. They are all, if you are still using 1Password or a small cluster of passwords that you're remembering, you're putting your client's data at risk. You're putting your firm's account, financial data at risk. It is so important. I use LastPass. We mandated it for the team a few years ago. It makes a massive difference. However, if you really do want to use password 123, it's great. Just tell me you're using it. Thank you. But two-factor authentication is the next step. So like password security is a hygiene factor at this point. It is a basic expectation. Two-factor authentication. And the big news today is that Intelligent Office, Intelliflo, have finally switched it on about a year later than they promised me they were going to. And I have not let them forget it on Twitter ever since.
That's probably busy.
Yeah, well, yeah, all these techies have got other stuff to do. But two-factor authentication sounds scary. It's another buzzword, 2FA. You see it all over the place. But like, please engage with it and switch it on. It is so much better than just relying on a password, because a password is something you know, and two-factor authentication is something you own. And you need both of those things to get in. And it cuts out something like 95% of possible ways someone's going to get into your client's data. It's worth the small amount of hassle to get it set up.
Brilliant. Listen, that's fantastic. We are incredibly coming up on the end of our time. I could listen to you talk, Alasdair, for much longer, and we haven't even started on the guitar stuff. So thank you very much for that. And I can see some of the chats there. I'll share my screen again for the last little bit, and here we go. And I'm going to focus in on that one there, and I still do this in such a way as if I'm speaking to a small child. So there's the link. I can't give it as a clickable link, unfortunately, for the powwow, or if I could have, I didn't manage. But I do owe you a quick joke, and this is a time-honored joke, but I like it very much, and it's about a couple who go to the same festival every year, and there's always a helicopter ride that they can go on, and the husband's Dave, and the wife's I don't know, not let's call her Jane, and Dave's always wanting to go in a helicopter, and she's always like, look, it's 50 quid. Absolutely not, right? 50 quid is 50 quid. You're not going to helicopter for 50 quid. And this goes on year after year after year. And interestingly, for the purposes of the joke, it's the price of helicopter ride never changes. It's always 50 quid. And years pass, and eventually Dave snaps, as Jane says, once again, no, you're not going in a helicopter, Dave. 50 quid is 50 quid. And he says, look, I'm 75, right? I'm 75 years old. Who knows if I'll even be here next year? I know 50 quid is 50 quid, but let's go and have the helicopter ride. Come on, let's do it. And the helicopter pilot happens to be standing nearby, and he says, listen, guys, I overheard what you're saying. Tell you what I'll do. Come and take the ride, and we'll have a great time, and I'll do lots of tricks and give you a really great ride. And if you can stay quiet all the way through it, I'll give you the ride for free. But if you shout out, or if you say anything on the way along, I'll charge you the 50 quid. How's that? A little challenge for you. They're like, okay, all right. We'll do it. And so they go on, and the helicopter guy does all his tricks. He does the very, very best he can, short of going upside down. Gives it the full beans, not a word. And they land down, and the helicopter pilot says, well, that was amazing. I really gave that everything, and I didn't hear a peep out of you. And Dave says, yeah, I mean, I thought I was going to cry out when Jane fell out 10 minutes ago, but 50 quid is 50 quid. So there you go. That's my joke for this week. I like that joke. And as ever, if you feel like supporting anyone through these times, as I see somebody did earlier, please consider the Samaritans, who are doing amazing work. Please go and see our friends at the powwow, and we will see you next week. Thanks very much, as always, for tuning in, and thanks particularly to Alasdair. All the best, everyone. Cheers.